All right, good morning, everyone. Cassie, it's 9 o'clock, so we'll call the meeting to order. Sunny just walked in, so it appears that we're just missing the commissioner today. All right, first item on the agenda is approval of the August 27 minutes. If you notice in the packages, it was August 13 minutes. Did everyone review the minutes online? If you did, then I would entertain a motion to approve the August 27 minutes. If not, then the ones that we have are 2 meetings ago, and we can postpone that until the next meeting to approve them. So either way, I'd entertain a motion.
I read them online and I would approve them.
Okay,
Second.
motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. Approval of today's agenda. If there's any issues with today's agenda, I'll just let the audience know that we have agendas on the back bookshelf. If you don't have one, so you can follow along with what we're doing today, you're welcome to go back there and get one so you can see. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. PJ, take it away for the consent agenda.
All right, PJ Conover, Director, Planning Department. Consent agenda. The following items have been placed on the consent agenda for action to be taken on all items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent agenda by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the Pennington County Board of Commissioners who will make the final decision, and there's quite a few, so probably gonna take a few minutes.
Hope you got some water.
All right, I'll be giving autographs in the hallway afterwards. All right. Item 3, conditional use permit review, 8122 for Wina Family Trust to review a caretaker's residence on the subject property in a suburban residential district. Staff recommends to end conditional use permit 8122 with the owner's concurrence. Item 4, conditional use permit review 9048 for Katrina Roseland to review a mobile home on a caretaker's residence in the suburban residential district. Staff recommends to end conditional use permit 9048 with the applicant's concurrence as is no longer needed. Item 5, conditional use permit review 9937 for Bob Young to review a mobile home park in a suburban residential district. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit 9937 to the October 8th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting with 2 conditions. Item 6, conditional use permit review 0257 for North Haynes Volunteer Fire Department to review a conditional use permit to add 2 additional garage bays to an existing fire station to allow for an addition onto the existing fire station in the general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 0257 with 6 conditions. Item 7, conditional use permit amendment review 0435 for Chris Peterson to review an existing conditional use permit to allow for 3 storage units in lieu of approving 10 storage units and to allow them to be larger than the approved 30-foot by 150-foot storage units and to allow a single-family residence to be used as a caretaker's residence for the storage units and to allow for an office/shop building in a general commercial district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit amendment 0435 with 15 conditions. Item 8, conditional use permit review 0934 for Lance and Diana Verholst to review a fifth-wheel camper to be parked on a vacant lot and utilized during the summer months in a low-density residential district. Staff recommends to continue the review of conditional use permit 0934 to the October 8th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting to allow staff time to contact the new landowner. Item 9, conditional use permit review 1633 for Clinton Newley to review a single-wide mobile home to be used as a permanent single-family residence on the subject property in a suburban residential district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1633 with 9 conditions. Item 10, conditional use permit review 1733 for Bituminous Paving, Terry Sewell as the agent to allow for a temporary hot mix asphalt batch plant, stockpile site, and contractor storage area for contract work in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of conditional use permit 1733 with 11 conditions. Item 11, Planned Unit Development Review 0902 for the Salvation Army to review the Salvation Army Camp Planned Unit Development. Staff recommends approval of the extension of Planned Unit Development 0902 with 21 conditions. Item 12, Major Planned Unit Development Amendment Review 1701 for Karen Moore to review the existing plan unit development to allow for a specialty recreational resort for bed and breakfast and events such as weddings, receptions, company picnics, family reunions, bridal and baby showers, and other types of small gatherings similar in nature, and additional RV sites in accordance with Section 213 of the Pennington County zoning ordinance. Staff recommends approval of the extension of major plan unit development amendment 1701 with 42 conditions. Item 13, minor plan unit development amendment 1705 for Tanner Colburn to amend the existing Sunset Ranch plan unit development to reduce the setback from 25 feet to 12 feet along the west property line. Staff recommends approval of the extension of minor plan unit development amendment 1705 with 22 conditions. Item 14, construction permit review 0601 for Pete Lean and Sons to review the mining of 501 acres of limestone and disposal of clean concrete construction debris for reclamation in a general agriculture and limited agriculture districts. Staff recommends approval of the extension of construction permit 0806 with 12 conditions. Item 15, construction permit review 0807 for Pete Lean and Sons to review the mining of 40 acres of limestone and disposal of clean concrete construction debris for reclamation in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends approval of the extension of construction permit 0807 with 12 conditions. Item 16, construction permit review 1703 for Mitch Morris to review the grading of a site and use of as a storage area to stockpile soil and concrete debris. Staff recommends to continue the review of construction permit 1703 to the October 8th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting to allow the applicant time to install perimeter barrier protections. Item 17, construction permit 1809 for Don and Karen Weber to place fill and level an area for an existing project. Staff recommends approval of the construction permit 0809 with 7 conditions. Item 18, construction permit review 1825 for Scott Woodvey to allow for a single-family residence in a highway district. Staff recommends denial of construction permit conditional use permit 1825. Item 19, conditional use permit 1831 for A&O Enterprises, David Fenneman, to allow an existing recreational vehicle to be used as a temporary living quarters to allow the applicant time to place a governor's home on the property in a general agriculture district. Staff recommends to continue conditional use permit 1831 to the September 24th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting. Item 20, layout plat 1807 for Kenneth Smith to reconfigure lot lines to create Lot AR, Lot C, and Lot D of Block 2 of the original township of Caputa in accordance with Section 401 of the Pennington County Subdivision Regulations. Staff recommends denial without prejudice of layout plat 1807. Home stretch, guys. Item 21, layout plat 1825 for Lynn Scheel to create cemetery tract of Jones Ranch subdivision. Staff recommends approval of layout plat 1825 with 12 conditions. Item 22, minor plat 1824 for Jeffrey Reed to create lots 3A and 3B of Snyder subdivision. Staff recommends approval of minor plat 1824 with 11 conditions.
All right. Any items that staff would like pulled?
No, but I'm sure there's a couple.
Okay. How about anyone from the membership? Are there any items to be pulled?
Mr. Chair, numbers 14, 15, and 17.
14, 15, and 17. Any other members' items?
Chair, I'd like to pull 18 and 22, please.
Any other items?
Well, and I just have a question just for clarification. When these are approved with all of the conditions, under what circumstances is it verified that they actually satisfied the conditions?
Upon the review, it depends on what the permit is, but usually upon the review or whatever the next step in the process is.
Okay, so if it's up for review in 1 year or 3 years, then at the end of that time frame, then you verify whether or not they satisfied the conditions?
Right. If it's going to come back in 12 months, we'll usually go out there and visit about 10 and a half months to 11 months.
Okay, I just didn't know if it was immediate, I mean, within a short amount of time after approval, if it were verified.
On some items, it can be, such as layout plats, because that's the first of many multi-step
I see.
process. So sometimes that next step is a couple weeks away. So we do immediate reviews on a few things, but again, it depends on the permit and the property.
Okay, thank you. I just needed clarification.
Any other items from the membership? Seeing none. Items, audience members, items 3 through 22. If you'd like any of those items to be pulled for individual consideration rather than a vote on the rest of them in one fell swoop, please come forward and let us know. All right, I see no one. So that's going to leave our consent calendar to be items 3 through 13, 16, 19 through 21. Did I get that all correct?
I believe so.
If I did, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent. Motion by Rich,
Second.
second by Sunny. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. That takes us to item number 14.
I pulled item number 14 just to abstain from the vote. I don't have any issues with item number 14.
Okay, so then the current recommendation for item 14 is to, where is it at? Recommending approval of the extension of CP 0806 with the following 12 conditions. Rich just pulled it so he could abstain from the vote. Any further discussion on that? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Motion second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 15.
Same story.
Same story. All right. That means the recommendation is to approve CP 0807 with the following 12 conditions. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So move. Second.
Motion is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. Can you just verify, Cassie? I forgot to say it, but one abstention for both of those. Rich abstained. That takes us to item number 17.
I don't have anything on item number 17. I just noticed that in the agenda, it says to recommend approval of construction permit CP 08-09. So that should be corrected to CP 18-09 with 7 conditions. And I would move approval with that change.
Roger that.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 18.
Were there specific questions?
Was there any
Well,
specifics?
not really. I just don't really quite understand,
The denial.
yeah, and why residential isn't allowed. I know that it's general commercial and therefore it's not designed for residential, but I don't quite understand the harm of residential in that district. I mean, I don't, so I guess I'd like to understand a little more about, what harm does it do, really? And then also in looking, I also, and I know that, number 7, that conditional use permit allows for a residence in that general commercial, but it's a caretaker's residence for the storage sheds. And so it's just not clear to me why a residence in that one is acceptable and it wouldn't be in this one.
On the one for Mr. Peterson, he actually has an established commercial use on his property. So there is a caretaker's. On this
Right.
one, there is no highway service district use established on that property. The other is it doesn't meet any of the criteria of our ordinance. If you read the intent of that district or anything, it doesn't meet the intent of our district at all. And it abuts suburban residential districts. So in staff's recommendation, it would be better to rezone that property to suburban residential because that would be a better zoning district for the use that he's proposing.
But so, just so I understand, so that if there was a commercial use identified for this property and they wanted to build a residence, like as a caretaker's residence, so to speak, then it would be okay.
Correct. That's the way our ordinance is written. And it's a highway service use, not commercial, because they have different uses associated with them.
Are both of these highway service?
No, Mr. Peterson's is actually general commercial. This one is highway service.
I see, okay, all right. Okay, thank you. I was wondering, is the applicant here? Is there any?
No.
No, okay, all right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions on this item?
Mr. Chair, maybe a question and a comment. Has the landowner been in touch with you guys after knowing that the recommendation is for denial of this?
Yes, and he's the one that requested us to continue it on 2 other occasions because he was looking at trying to put up a sales office or a model home, but I have not heard from him since the last request. I did talk to him about the need for establishing a highway service district use in order to do this, and that the property would be better rezoned to a suburban residential district because it abuts it, and that's how the properties are being used in the area.
Any thoughts from him on why he doesn't want to rezone it to suburban?
No, he has come to our office, he's talked to several staff members, has had very different reasonings or different proposals that he wanted to do, like a contractor storage, but that still isn't a permitted use in highway service district. The only use that he had come up with that he had suggested was a model home sales office. But that was the only one that would have met the highway service district permitted uses.
If we deny this and he comes back in with something that is acceptable in a highway service district, this is a non-issue, correct?
Correct.
So it's just he's trying to mix uses in a zoning district that doesn't belong there. And I guess my comment to that would be is he could probably put something in now, but the question is what does that turn into later when it's adjacent to the suburban residential districts that I would fear would become an issue later on. So the good intentions typically evolve into situations later, right? So I'll be in favor. I agree with staff's recommendation for denial on this until the applicant understands exactly what he wants to do.
Fair enough. Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Any members of the audience like to speak on behalf of this item? Seeing none, I'd entertain the recommendation is staff is recommending denial of conditional use permit CU 1825. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Denial.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries. That takes us to item number 22.
Volstead Assistant Planning Director. Item 22 is a minor plat. Are there specific questions on it?
Well, yes, my specific question is, and I just want to make sure I know, that I understand this properly. So this, essentially, the only thing that this is waiting for is to get a variance, and the variance in the lot size, and then once that, if that is approved, then this minor plat can be filed. I mean, there's a few other things, but that's really the main there's that decision to be made.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, the biggest hurdle for this plat between now and filing is the lot size variance, or if they do still have the option to try to rezone it as well if the lot size variance fails.
Right.
So, but that is their biggest hurdle
Right,
at this point.
right. And there was some opposition to that, as I read here.
Yes.
Okay. And that will be continued to September 18th, which is next week, I guess,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yep.
So what is the practice on these minor plats, to approve the minor plat when there's still, I can understand it when it's just kind of administrative, perfunctory things that need to be done. But when there's, a major issue like that outstanding, what's the procedural thinking in terms of why this is done in advance of waiting for that decision?
PJ Conway, Director of Planning Department. Thank you for bringing that up, because that is a concern that this board has had, this planning commission has had for some time, and a concern mainly that the planning department has. The commissioners have, over the years, not just the planning commission, but the board has given some direction to try to help the applicants move along and put conditions that puts a little extra burden on the staff to have to go back and double check. This is one of those examples, Commissioner, that we were talking about. We're actually working with State's Attorney's Office and going to address the Planning Commission eventually on that. We're going to stop that practice, and we're going to not bring things forward unless they are complete, or at least as far as we can get them to that point without having to get some direction from the Planning Commission. So essentially it was something that was developed over the years at the request of the board members to help the applicants move forward. But what it does do is create a lot of continuations and extra work for staff and then extra trips back for the applicants. So
Right, okay, well, thank you for that.
you're welcome.
Anyone got anything else for this
Mr.
item?
Chair?
Yes, go ahead, Sonny.
I saw a couple things on this. I don't know if I'm missing something, but appears to be regarding lots 3, A and B, but the language in here is talking about lot 4.
That might be me. Probably me. Let's see here.
For example, in the county highway department comments,
Oh,
and then further on into the analysis.
oh, county highway, what they're talking about is, here, let me see if I can draw it on here. So the lot outlined in red obviously is the one that they're subdividing, but there's this existing driveway that comes through here. This right here is lot 4. What county highway is referring to is they want an easement actually dedicated on the plat for where that existing driveway goes to access lot 4. That's the lot 4 that they're referring to.
Okay. There's another thing regarding the highway department's comments. Says direct access into Hart Ranch Road West will not be permitted.
Right.
In the analysis on number 4, it says that the plat be corrected to show the correct road name of Hart Ranch Road West. So is that conflicting?
Initially, they had Hart Ranch Road West, identified wrong. Previously, they had it called Hart Ranch, they didn't have the correct road name in there. So, County Highway wanted to make sure that they had the correct road name on the plat. They won't allow access onto it, but they want it identified correctly on the plat.
Okay, so it's addressed with that road name, but that's not where the access is.
Nope, the access is off of Triple S Drive. It is actually addressed off of Triple S Drive, but they just wanted to make sure that on the plat, it's correctly called Hart Ranch Road West.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Question.
that's all I was wondering. Thank you.
All right, go ahead, Kathy.
Sure, Cassie, I've got one other question. So let's, if in the hypothetical,
Yeah.
that the lot size variance is denied at the Board of Commissioners,
Right.
and this item, minor plat, we approved, what happens to it then? It just goes away?
Yep.
What happens if they decide they're going to pursue a rezone? Then there would be, you'd be going to the effort here of creating another minor plat application. Is that right? With the,
Essentially, so if you were to approve this plat today and their lot size variance fails, they still have the option to rezone. So the plat could get approved, but they would not be able to file the plat until it's either rezoned or they have a lot size variance to bring the proposed size of the lots into compliance one way or another.
conditions of this minor plat are that they get the lots, it says lot size variance or rezoned,
Yes.
so it gives
Yep.
that option. I
Yes.
see. Okay, all right, very good. Thank you.
Any further questions? Any members of the audience want to speak on behalf of this item? Seeing none, staff recommends approval of minor plat PL 1824 with the following 11 conditions. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion for discussion.
All right, there is a motion for discussion. Is there a second?
A second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion?
The question I would have to staff is, would it be better to continue this until the lot size variance is heard on the 18th?
The only reason that I recommended not to continue it is because your guys' recommendation would put it on the same meeting as that lot size variance, and lot size variances are heard by the Board of Adjustment. Board of Adjustment hears their items before the Board of Commissioners, so their lot size variance has to be acted on and heard before the Board of Commissioners will hear this plat, but it'll make them on the same day, if that makes sense.
So it'll just be ahead of the other item in the agenda?
Yeah, the lot size variance will be ahead of this item on the agenda.
Okay.
So they'll have their decision one way or another and then be able to act appropriately on the plat, depending on how the lot size variance comes out.
No further
Question
questions.
for you. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. Takes us to item number 23.
All right, item 23, this is a major planned unit development amendment request. This is a request to amend an existing planned unit development to allow a single-family residence to be used as a vacation home rental on the subject property. The applicants is Catherine Sapinski. The local contact and the agent is Rob Livingston. He is here in the audience today. As this property exists today, it is zoned within a planned unit development. It's within the reserve at Remington Ranch. It's 3.86 acres. Access to it is currently off of Placer Place. There's no special flood hazard area on this property, and it currently contains a single-family residence and an on-site wastewater treatment system. The planned unit development for the reserve at Remington Ranch was originally created in 1992. The last time it was reviewed was in 1999. It has not been reviewed since. It is currently being reviewed on a complaint basis only. We've never gotten a complaint about this planned unit development. However, on July 9th, staff did receive a written complaint that there was a vacation home rental operating on this property, which is in violation of the planned unit development. This planned unit development does not have specific allowed uses specified within it. So the way we've treated planned unit developments like that before in the past is if it does not explicitly say that you can do it, you have to amend the PUD to do it. So staff did speak with the property owner, Paul Sapinski, on July 30th, and we discussed what the intent of the house was, and the conditions of the planned unit development and how it differed from some of the surrounding properties. And then on August 8th, Rob Livingston, the agent, did submit the major planned unit development amendment request. On August 10th, staff did receive a letter from the Department of Environment and Natural Resources approving the on-site wastewater treatment system for the vacation home rental. DENR approves it for a maximum daily flow of 360 gallons for up to 6 persons per night if this amendment is approved. On August 13th, staff did receive a copy of the vacation home license from the Department of Health. It's my understanding that they've had that vacation home license since last year. So the Reserve at Remington Ranch PUD, I kind of put together a little bit of a map here because I want it to be pretty clear that there are other PUDs and surrounding properties in this area that do have similar uses to this. There is the Happy Trails subdivision, which is this green star up here, all highlighted in yellow. Happy Trails is a different planned unit development that specifically and explicitly allows vacation home rentals. Across the road over here, there's another planned unit development. It's just a 2-lot planned unit development, currently houses the Dairy Twist, several rental cabins, and a bed and breakfast. This property right here where this green star is at, that is zoned highway service, currently has a motel and several rental cabins behind it. The subject property is right here, denoted with this red X. So I say that because I do want to point out that it does appear that this use is in harmony with some of the existing uses around it. However, I have received, the staff report says 5 letters. You should have 5 more that I sent out on Friday. So I've received 10 letters in objection from the neighboring property owners, in objection to having a vacation home rental on this property. One of those letters does come from the original developer of the Reserve at Remington Ranch. So based on those letters, it doesn't appear that the use is potentially in harmony with the original intent of the subdivision, even though there's some of the similar existing uses out there. So staff is asking guidance from the Planning Commission on how to move forward with this PUD amendment request. Since this is a major PUD amendment, this does have to go up to the Board of Commissioners level. It actually has to be heard and approved by the Board of Commissioners twice in order for this to be allowed. This is a request, I would also like to point out, specific to this lot. They're not requesting to amend the entire PUD, they're only requesting to amend this lot. So it would not open that door. If other properties within the reserve wanted to do the same thing, they'd have to go through this same process. This would only allow it on this lot. But I am asking for guidance from you guys on how to move forward. I did include 15 conditions in there if you guys so choose to approve the major PUD amendment. But other than that, that's all I got.
All right, any questions for staff?
How many, how many homes are actually built in this planned unit development? I mean, are each of those lots improved?
No, not all of them are improved. I did a rough count on Thursday or Friday. From what I could see, I believe there's 14 address points within the
Okay,
reserve at
and
Remington
10
Ranch.
of the 14 people wrote.
Yes, yep. I've received 10 letters. There was an email from one of the property owners out there that indicated that there could be upwards of 15 letters. By the time this gets to the board level, I've only received 10 at this point.
I see.
All right, Jim?
Now, are there some kind of covenants in this subdivision?
There are covenants in this subdivision.
Do they exclude this kind of thing?
They do not specifically exclude vacation home rentals. So what we.
They speak at all to rentals in any way?
They speak to, like many covenants do, commercial activity, to my understanding. I have not read all of the covenants. I've just very briefly read through them because they're like 30 pages long. But the way we've treated, or the way our ordinance specifies with vacation home rentals, is the only way we can exclude them based on covenants is if the covenants specifically say vacation home rentals are prohibited.
Right.
Okay, it was my understanding that we did not enforce covenants, that they were outside of the boundaries. However, this property is clearly zoned as a planned unit development, and therefore the zoning laws, rules, conditions would then apply. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of why Cassie pointed out, it's PUD, and we've treated PUDs. If it's not allowed, then we typically say that it's not allowed unless it
Yes.
specifically describes in the PUD that it is allowed.
Yes.
So that's kind of some of the things we have to pay attention to that we've done in the past. Kathy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Is it, if you're a lot owner, like for example, the subject property here, and within a PUD, it's possible for them to petition for a rezone of their lot, isn't it? Like, for example, they could rezone that lot to be highway service or whatever the blue is.
Yeah.
I mean, that is possible.
Yes, that is possible. They could petition to remove themselves from the PUD, essentially rezone themselves into something different. That is possible, yes.
Yeah, to me, that would make more sense because whenever a person buys or builds, they should be aware of the conditions under which, they're buying or building a home. In other words, the existence of the planned unit development, and to change it, after the fact. Yeah, I think it should be rezoned if that were the case.
Are vacation home rentals an allowable use in highway service?
It is.
Yes, in highway service, it certainly is. The only caveat with highway service is you would have to be a little bit leery that a vacational rental is an allowed use, but if they ever turned it back into just a regular single-family residence, then you're kind of in the same situation that we talked about with the other gentleman earlier today.
And then I would have a question that if they're, correct me if I'm wrong, they are part of a homeowners association.
Yes.
Now, if they remove themselves from the PUD and rezone highway service, do they still fall in that HOA contract, or how does that all work? I mean, that's a legal thing, but I mean.
Yeah, that part of it, I don't know. I don't know how they would go about removing themselves from the HOA. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work.
Well, if the lot were no longer a part of the planned unit development, then I would think it would no longer be a part of any homeowners association as well.
Not necessarily, because if you sign a contract and it says, even if you're, because I think there's some places too that they're not necessarily in it, but the property's next to a homeowners
I see,
association.
I see.
So,
Okay.
yeah, there's some other stuff like that I've seen.
I see. Well, I am anxious to hear from
All right.
members of the audience.
Okay, is there any other staff members, or any other questions for staff first?
Rezoning this property would not satisfy the folks who live there now.
Rezoning essentially would still require the same
But
type of
that
notifications and
is almost
probably
an
the
end
same.
run here
Right.
that I think not that I'm opposed to allowing simply the majority of people in a community to dictate what people do with their property necessarily, assuming it's lawful, and this is a lawful use for a PUD. But that would be, difficult we'd be right back here doing the same thing. Yeah.
Right. Any further questions for staff?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Rich.
Cassie, what happened on September 4th? The Board of Commissioners denied the agent's request for a refund of penalty fees paid for the major planned unit development amendment. How are there already penalty fees paid?
Because this vacation home rental has actually been operating on this property since last year. So it was operating without the proper permits. So when they actually submitted for the major plan unit development request by our ordinance, they had to pay penalty fees. They requested that those penalty fees be refunded by the Board of Commissioners, and the board denied that.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? All right, seeing none. I just have a quick question, just by show of hands of the audience. Who all is here to speak on behalf of this item? Just so I have an idea for time frame purposes. Okay. All right, fair enough. All right. Well, then, would the property owner like to come forward first?
I'm Rob Livingston. I'm the agent for Kath Spinski, and I'll try to address some of these questions and things that you might have. I want to thank you for your time for listening to all this. Going back to the highway service and rezoning it, and PJ can maybe confirm this, but highway service allows a lot of other things besides just a vacation rental. With the PUD, it could be locked into being just a vacation rental. You couldn't put a gas station hotel or something like that in. So I think in that light, it might be better to keep it in a PUD because it's more controlling by the county. Was stated that they weren't the proper permits. There was a little confusion when they got it. They didn't know that it wasn't allowable with a PUD. They did do their due diligence. They went down and got a copy of the covenants and read that, had an attorney read that for them. They went and applied for all the proper licensing and got all the licensing done. The PUD did not say it couldn't be allowed, so they didn't know that you guys ruled it as if it's not in there, it's not allowed. They just figured it wasn't stated that it wasn't, so that it was probably okay. They did this about at the beginning of 17, and they started running it in the middle of 17. So they did do their due diligence and thought they were doing everything by the book and getting everything. That's why they asked for their refund of the penalties. Cassie, could I get those pictures up? There's some pictures. This property is at the bottom of the hill, at the very beginning of the subdivision, and how do I switch those?
The little arrow there.
Perfect. So this is from the highway, as you can see, and you can see the Sapinski's house, and you can see the cabins are within 50 feet of it from the hotel, and the road's going up a bit, and then Remington Ranch is up on top of the hill beyond that. There's not a house in sight from Remington Ranch. There's not any other residents that can actually see it. It's surrounded by little cabins within 50 feet of it, so it just kind of gives you...
Who owns these cabins?
The Mountain View, the highway service, right below them, next to them.
Okay.
They're not in that PUD.
So it's right on the border of this other commercial development.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see the relevance here, just trying to give you an idea of what the area is. This is off their front porch. You can see all the commercial areas from Candyland to the Power Sports, the gas station to everything. Again, if you look up, go back looking up the hill, you can't see any of the residences anywhere in sight. Nobody can see this residence from that property. But I just wanted to do this so you could kind of get a feel of, what is around this property. There's their house on the right, and the cabins are right there on the left. Their property line's right where that fence weed row is. This is a view off their deck. These are all the other vacation home rentals right in the same, within, oh, I don't know, 100 feet to 500 feet. As showed, and this is looking up. You can see there's the only house you can see in the subdivision. It's kind of not a great picture there, but looking over Power Sports and Candyland there on the right. Anyway, and this is some of the residences up on the hill where they can see each other. It's a group. It's pretty flat and a nice area up there. So, there are some letters that say it's going to impact the value of the homes and things of that nature. It's been my understanding from realtors and appraisers that we have not seen a vacation home area impact the property values of other homes in the area. There was quite a few things. Back to this. There's a couple other things that they were saying about Airbnb and bad neighbors and stuff. These people use vacation rentals by owner. It's a very strict contract. They do take a $1,500 deposit it can be for noise, obstruction, not doing anything, not taking care of. So the people that are there, are giving you $1,500 to follow the rules that they printed up for the vacation home. We would even be willing, because we did read some of the letters that somebody drove up the road farther, we'd be willing to add a condition, the 15 conditions that are on it, we don't have a problem with. We would be even willing to add another condition that we post a sign that says private residents, no trespassing past their driveway, since it's right at the bottom, to try to help that. Because we do feel for them and we understand their concerns on the rest of the PUD. But going back to the rezoning to the PUD, I believe that keeping it in the PUD is more controllable than making it highway service, when you can just, once it's highway service, you can do whatever highway service allows you to do. So I think that would be the proper thing to do. Any questions or?
Is the access to the subject about which we're talking the same access to the other homes?
Yes, that access is Happy Trails and up to the Remington Ranch.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Rob? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any other members of the audience like to come forward and speak on behalf of this item? Come on forward, sir.
My name is Mike Vidal. I've lived at the Remington Ranch since 2002, and I own my lot since 95. I've been on the board, I can't tell you how long, I can't remember when I wasn't. And I'm the treasurer, and I tell you that because, Mr. Coleman, you had concerns about how messy everything was. I'm going to make it real messy. The Reserve of Remington Ranch Homeowners Association owns the whole water system. One of the wells is on Kathy Zabinski's property, but we own that chunk. We also own all the roads, including the road Placer Place to the highway. Rob Livingston thought that was Happy Trails. That's Placer Place, and it's a private road. We own it. Happy Trails has the right for ingress and egress is all they have for that subdivision. And I tell you that because of the fact that we have to operate liability insurance. And the two biggest expenses that the homeowners face are the maintenance on the roads and our liability insurance, because we own our roads. And that fact became real obvious, because I didn't know that Kathy was renting that out on a nightly basis. And being the treasurer, I pay the bills and I fill out the insurance questionnaires. And this year, for the first year, they had a line item on that questionnaire: are there any nightly rentals in your homeowners association?
I'm sorry, any what?
Nightly rentals?
Thank you.
And I said, no, because I didn't know she was doing it. Then I checked the insurance agent, and he said, well, they don't like, insurance companies don't like nightly rentals. And they will probably bump you into a different class, raising your liability insurance if they don't cancel you totally. We have to worry about that next year. But I'm telling you that because that's affecting the other 27 lots and what they will have to pay so that she can have her one lot as a nightly rental. And I'm not going into what everybody said in the letters and all of that. I'm not going to waste your time there. You've got it. But this is probably only the board of directors know this, not the property owners, because it was never an issue. When the covenants and the PUD was formed in 1995, were there vacation home rentals? Were there nightly rentals? No. That's why our covenants didn't include anything, because they were protected by the PUD. So we're asking you not to recommend that amendment. Thank you.
Is there any questions for Mike?
I have one.
Go ahead, Kathy.
You know, the road, I mean, I understand about you can own the road and you maintain it and so on. Has it been designated as a public access easement, or is it just a private road?
It's just a private road.
Okay,
Is it a road, do you have a road district then
No.
formed? Okay,
We didn't form a road district, and I'll tell you why.
okay,
If you're in a road district, you are guaranteeing
public
that
access.
every property owner in that district personally guarantees that that will be paid. Even though his neighbor goes broke and doesn't pay, he is still paying for that. And so the road district, we just said, I'm not going to guarantee that Kathy Sabinsky's going to pay her share of the road district,
I see,
because I really don't know her. She doesn't live here,
I see.
okay? It's not a road district, it's a private road.
Is it a paved road?
No,
Oh, okay,
it's not a paved road. We have 13 empty lots now,
I see.
okay? That there's no sense putting asphalt on our road until those lots are built on,
Yeah, I understand.
okay?
Any further questions? Nope. I just have a question for you.
Okay?
This is just, I'm asking the question out there. You talked, your two concerns were your road maintenance and your liability insurance. Have you talked to the Sapinskis about that? Your concern on that? Roughly what the cost would be, to see where they stand on that as well, understanding that if they're in the
We
PUD.
don't know what the cost is gonna be for our liability. We don't even know if we can get liability insurance. We don't know what the cost is gonna be. We just know from our agent that insurance companies don't like vacation rentals.
Okay.
And because we own our road, we are liable for it. And that's what we need the insurance for. And that's what we've paid for. But those are our two biggest expenses,
Okay.
okay?
All right, thank you. Any other members of the audience like to speak on this item? If so, come forward.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'm Jim Campbell with Lot 8, Block 2, Remington Ranch. And I think there was a couple of things that poor Kathy had been misinformed when she wanted to start this venture. And I think she operated on some false information, because I would assume a commercial operation is when you pay sales tax. And sales tax would be your operating commercial operation, which does say in the covenants, you don't have, or you can't operate a commercial business in a property within a subdivision. And I would like to voice my opinion against the septic, because of the water issue and the road issue. But that's all I gotta say. Any questions?
Any questions for Jim?
I'm sorry, what was the issue regarding the water? The number of,
Her well is on, our property is
yeah,
adjacent
okay.
to the well, and there's no way to take her off.
Thank you.
So she can't operate independently from the subdivision.
I understand. Thank you.
Okay?
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Sir,
Hold on,
where do
Jim.
you live on the property?
Jim, come back up here. There's more questions.
You said lot,
Trying to give you an opportunity here.
lot 8 or lot 2 or something like that. What, can you point to where your property is in relation to the subject property?
Oh. Let me get focused in here. We're on, I'm not even on the map here, I don't think. Oh, yes, I am. Right. Is there a pointer here on this? Yeah, point me right there.
Right there?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's my lot right there.
thank you.
And Kathy is at the very entrance of the subdivision, which kind of, you can't really throw her off one side or the other because, boom, you're right there. And you
Right.
can't, remove her one way or the other because she is the entrance of it. And I know we have the rentals at the beginning, but we can't control that, but we control hers and everything else. And the rental thing does add a whole ball of bad things to it too, because you don't know who your neighbor's gonna be. You don't know who's coming in, who's on a nightly deal, and that makes everybody nervous in the neighborhood, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Okay,
Any further questions for Jim? All right, thank you very much, Jim.
thank you.
Hold, Jim, there is a question from Jim.
Well, you turn your back, everybody's brain starts working, I guess, huh?
Okay,
Well, I notice you expressed concern about the people who come and rent and you don't know them and so forth. Now, does it bother you that there are these vacation home rentals or these cabins that can't be more than about 50
Oh, yeah.
yards away from this
it
house?
does bother me, but I can't do anything about that.
Right, okay,
Because
but
that's
you
unhappy.
realize there's a
That's
risk.
unhappy trails, and they have their own problems too from the homeowners that live on Happy Trails that have to put up with the renters. Because I know several folks on Happy Trail that have permanent houses and they do not rent.
Right, but you realize
They
you're already
express to
exposed to
me
some risk.
about the difficulties they have with the
Right.
transients and the people come in. Yeah, you understand it, but then you get some weirdos come through and it makes you nervous. It makes the wife nervous too. And you
Okay.
gotta live with that, Jim.
Okay, good. I want you to be aware of it.
Okay.
Okay,
Any
thanks.
further questions for Jim? All right, thank you, Jim.
I'm
Appreciate
gonna
it.
walk back.
I don't know. We'll find out if somebody decides they want to ask you another question. Any other audience members like to speak on behalf of this item? There's a gentleman coming from the back.
Hi, my name's Eric Lind, and I live just, let's see, on the map, it would be just left of Jim. Lot 10, I believe, is my lot. One more over from that.
Okay.
Yep. So I don't have a whole lot of history in the development. My wife and I just purchased in December of last year. One of the things that was appealing about the development is that it's one of the few areas around that is not vacation rentals. You know your neighbors. Something else that may be relevant in your consideration is the pictures that you saw were of that area. As you're driving up to the rest of the development, you're going uphill, and the rest of the houses are up on top there. Of the lots that are for sale, a number of lots which are in our homeowners association are not developed yet, and they are or would be in the view of the subject property. So while there's not houses there now, there will be more in the future. And I think that using the logic of you can see cabins, commercial property now from this cabin, you will be able to see residents from this cabin in the future. And I don't know who owns those lots at the current time. However, that would be a piece for consideration for you.
All right, any questions for Eric?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead. Rick.
So are you opposed to this action?
I am opposed to it. I think that the logic where it's allowed would then be allowed for every other property, you know, because there will be residents in view that would fall under the same rule as a ask for forgiveness instead of permission kind of a thing.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, seeing none, go ahead, Michelle, come forward. I think you want to address something.
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. A couple items I would like to address. First, for the benefit of the new Planning Commissioner members, I'd like to maybe explain a little further the issue concerning covenants. It is the State's Attorney's Office's position that it is not appropriate for the Planning Commission or the board to enforce private covenants, specifically because that is a private contract. And as previously stated, the focus of this commission should be on the enforcement and the applicability of our zoning ordinance. With a little further background on that, although South Dakota Supreme Court has not decided what is meant by commercial versus residential, within the context of vacation home rentals, other courts, other jurisdictions have. And the majority of those jurisdictions focus on the use of the occupants, not the use of the owner. So we hear about prohibitions of commercial use under these old covenants that I grant you were not really designed with the idea of vacation home rentals 20, 30 years ago. But the majority of the courts have said the home itself is still being used for residential purposes, even though the owner may be using it as a commercial venture. The actual use of the home is still residential. With that being said, every single one of those decisions in other jurisdictions is focused on the actual language of that particular covenant. And that's another reason why this commission, nor should the board, get involved in these private agreements, because it's better left to the courts to determine what the parties meant at the time that agreement was in fact drafted, not for this commission to try and parse out, hear evidence as to what was meant by the drafter 20 years ago. It's really a private covenant. We don't want to insert ourselves into that litigation. And if the homeowners association feels that that particular covenant indeed does prohibit VHRs as a commercial use, they need to file an action in civil court and litigate that in civil court. With that being said, now back to what was already mentioned, it's this commission's role to enforce our ordinances. So I haven't done a great deal, I haven't done any research. I just took a quick look at our current ordinances as I was listening to the discussion. 319 subsection B specifically says a VHR is allowed in a planned unit development per section 213B2, and that's the section dealing with PUDs. When I turn to B2, 319B2, it's circular. It just sends us back to the vacation home rental. However, I would submit to you that I believe the intent is that they're allowed in planned unit development as long as they meet the criteria of a planned unit development. So I turn to actually C4, which is regulations. And C4 specifically talks about the type of criteria you should consider in considering any PUD. That includes appropriate relationship in the surrounding area, internal street systems, right-of-ways, open space, privacy in terms of needs of individual families and neighbors, pedestrian traffic. Building types are appropriate to the density and site relationship. And the last criteria listed is that there are adequate provisions for sewer and water systems as approved by the Pennington County Planning Department. So I would suggest to you, since it indicates Section 319 dealing with specifically with vacation home rentals, that says it's allowed per Section 213 PUD, that we should really be focusing on whether this particular use is appropriate, applying the criteria as set forth in the PUD ordinance.
Thank you, Michelle. And can I just point out something? You can tell me if I'm off base on this. If individuals want to look at the commercial side like you were discussing there, even renting it at a year at a time, so if you have, that would still be considered a commercial enterprise because they're making money on it. And then you have to ask the question, do they not allow someone to rent their property in there. And if they do, then you're saying that, well, that commercial application doesn't apply then because they're making money off of a yearly rental or 2-year rental or something of that nature, correct?
That's an excellent point, because many of the case decisions in other jurisdictions talk about that exact point. There's nothing in the covenant that prohibits month-to-month or yearly rental to long-term rentals. So is there somewhere in the covenant that would somehow suggest that it prohibits short-term rental? So it's a very good point, absolutely.
Any questions for
I've got a
Michelle?
couple, you kept referencing a planned unit development versus the planned unit development, because I'm assuming the language in each planned unit development is somewhat different depending upon the property.
Absolutely. These are just the criteria
Okay.
that you apply anytime you consider
Okay.
an original request or an amendment to a planned unit development. Does it meet these criteria?
Sure. Yeah, and then to address your concern, sales tax would be collected on the short-term rental, and there would not be sales tax collected on the yearly rental. So it's,
But again,
it is
you would then
some type
be,
of a difference. You are making money,
But
but it
again,
is
a
not
commercial
subject
venture
to
making
sales
money.
tax, because I can't remember if it's weekly or monthly.
Right.
But there are laws dictating that as well.
but again, then you're wading into really the role of the
Sure,
courts.
yeah, I understand.
Especially since we're not going to sit here and parse through maybe a 20-page document in terms of what the drafter did or did not
Sure.
intend. And I would suggest that, again, although these agreements, many of them are 20, 30 years old and didn't envision the situation of vacation home rentals, that these HOAs should really be going back and perhaps amending their home rental agreements, not just with regards to VHRs, but perhaps how they're going to allocate costs for road maintenance, those types of things.
So if I heard you correctly then, the owners, and I don't know if it says a majority or, 2/3 or 3/4 or whatever, but they could in fact do the major amendment to the planned unit development to specifically disallow vacation rentals if the Spirit were to move them. Could
Not the
that not be
PUD,
done?
the HOA. And of course, that wouldn't apply retroactively. That would only apply moving forward. But again, they'd need to consult with their own counsel.
Sure.
Although they might not be able to effectively preclude a use that is applied retroactively, that they may be able to at least allow,
Sure.
somehow offset some of the additional costs. But that's really not the concern of this commission. It's just whether you think the approval of this VHR is appropriate for this particular PUD under the criteria in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Michelle? All right, thank you. Any other audience members like to speak on behalf of this item? Go ahead, come on up, ma'am.
Good morning. I'm the owner, Kathy Sapinski, and I just wanted to give you a little background. I am originally from here in South Dakota, and I am the owner of 23801 Placer Place. It's been in my family since 1993. I inherited the home from my mom when she passed away in 2014. At the same time, my husband, Paul, contracted lung cancer and was unable to help me maintain the property the way it should be. And so we decided to look at other avenues to help defer the cost and the maintenance of our home. So we looked at our covenants to see if we could defray the costs by renting the property through VRBO for less than 90 days a year. We researched the project through the Register of Deeds, the Planning Commission. We talked to a VRBO manager plus our current agent's attorney. And so we proceeded with our licenses, our sales tax permit, and insurance with a $2 million umbrella for our home. In doing this, we decided renting 90 days a year would be the best option for our families because our families like to enjoy staying there for long periods of time. So we like to enjoy the home ourselves. We started renting in July of 2017. And then June of 2018, we received that we were in violation of renting our home. So in regards to some of the opposition letters that you have received, I just want to touch on a few major points that were given there. Some of them worry that our area's value will go down, but being an owner since 1993, we have not seen any devaluation of our property, even though it hooks up to all the commercialism that is around us. They also mentioned that commercial property will be a detriment to our area. Well, with all these properties next door to us, behind us, and down the hill from us, I don't see anything that has happened so far in that issue. We are providing proper amounts of insurance. Plus, there will not be any additional structures that will cause us to add any additional water usage from the wells in this area. In regards to Mr. Lynn's concern, we don't live in a perfect world where we get to pick and choose our neighbors. They have been labeling our renters as transients who are unwelcome in our area. But these vacationers are spending money and supporting our tourism and economy in South Dakota. We are providing a service to families who need something other than a motel or a tent. It was mentioned that we cannot maintain our property because we live in Omaha. We have a manager who inspects our property weekly, a cleaning company, a lawn service, and a handyman on call for any problems that do arise. We take pride in our property and we continue to upgrade it. South Dakota depends on tourism, so yes, there are many unknown people wandering the hills, spending their money, and looking at property for sale, even in our own area. Mr. Cutler himself depends on unknown people for his livelihood, but wants to restrict where they can rent. In reference to making a buck, those dollars that we do get maintain our property in its pristine condition inside and out. So those bucks stay right here in our community because we are putting it right back in. Mr. Cutler first advised us of the violation in June of 2018, and within less than 30 days, our website was blocked out for any further rentals until we got this problem finished. By his own admission, Mr. Cutler said that there has been no excessive noise. I do plead guilty, though, that the trash cans were left out more than a day due to the rain and flooding issues. My manager couldn't get there because she had her own issues of the flooding in her rentals. In conclusion, Pennington County has 2,018 Airbnbs and 1,048 VRBOs. And I'm wondering, are all of these in commercial zoned areas? I don't know. And does the county have time to find out about these things? Are they all in commercial zoned areas, or are they able to be in other zoned areas? I'm not sure. That's a question for someone else to be able to answer. Thank you for your time.
Are there any questions for Kathy?
I have one question.
Go ahead, Jim.
How much do you rent this house for generally?
We actually rent it for $400 a night. And so the people that are able to use this home are people that I feel very secure in renting, and my manager also screens them, and so does VRBO. so that they are able to, I think they understand and realize how to take care of things. We have had no problems whatsoever on our property, any damage, or anything like that. So I have been, and I'm a very picky person about wanting someone into my home. I didn't know whether I could do it or not, but I have been very pleased with the people that we have had in there. I have had no problems whatsoever.
So you rent this a maximum of 90 days a year, is that right?
Yes,
The rest of the time
is my family, or it
empty,
sits.
right?
I'm sorry?
Or it's empty?
Yes,
Your family is there, I assume, for brief periods of time, and the rest of the time is empty.
exactly.
Any further questions for Kathy?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, ma'am. Any other members of the audience like to speak on behalf of this item? I have one question. Maybe Cassie can answer it for me. Can you bring that picture up again? There was a picture of a road. Their house is on one side, and I think the cabins were on the other side, because I'm going to have a question for Mike. Mike, if you don't mind coming up here, because you're the one who talked about the roads, correct?
Yes.
It's not that one. It was a picture, it kind of showed up the road, the house, I believe the house was on the right,
See it from that first one, though.
and the cabins were
Actually, you can see that road
right
from the
there.
first picture.
That's the one. So is that your road, right? Is that y'all's
Oh,
private
that's the
road?
motel.
Okay, so that's the,
That's behind the subject house.
Downhill, okay.
okay, so that's not the road that, people go into the subdivision according to.
No.
Okay, I just wanted to get clarification on that, because the way I looked at it, I was like, well, when you look at that, if that's going into the subdivision, then, those renters are already driving on the road, so that's why I was trying to get a
That's
perspective.
behind her house, behind the trees.
Okay,
That's above the motel. Those belong to the motel. You know where
Okay.
the Dairy Twist Drive-In is?
I do. I drive out that,
Everybody knows
I drive out that way. In fact, I was just down there yesterday, dropping my kids off at summer camp, well, not a summer camp, but a camp
That's
down there.
across from the Dairy Twist.
Yep, okay,
Okay.
thank you. All right, any further questions? If not, I have one final for Cassie. Just out of curiosity, Cassie, if they met all the criteria to amend the PUD and things of that nature, where did y'all get hung up to ask for guidance rather than giving a recommendation to approve and disapprove? And I'm just want to know what was your pivoting factor on all of this for y'all?
Honestly, I was pretty torn, because it does seem to fit the surrounding existing uses because it's in such close proximity to all of those other rentals and things along those lines. But it doesn't necessarily appear to be in harmony with what the intent of this particular subdivision and planning and development was. So that was kind of the two sides that I saw.
So the one question was,
Appropriateness of the area, but appropriateness of the specific subdivision was where I was torn.
I have
Go ahead, Sandy.
just two comments. Number one, on item number 15, this is just a minor thing. You said that this conditional use permit be reviewed.
Yeah.
It's not a conditional use permit.
Right, yep, that's
It's
just.
a major amendment
Yep.
too. Okay.
That's a wordage
And my
change.
second comment is, after listening to all of the folks here, I wonder if it's even prudent for us as a commission to vote on it one way or the other, whether or not it shouldn't be deferred to some other legal authority, or,
Well,
I don't know.
Go ahead, Jim.
that raises an interesting question. On what grounds would we deny this? Maybe Michelle can.
That's why I was directing you to the PUD ordinance, section 213-4, C4. I don't know if any of you have that before you. I'm certainly happy to hand you my copy. C4 specifically states the commission must be satisfied the site plan for the planned unit development has met each of the following criteria or can demonstrate that one or more of them are not applicable and that a practical solution consistent with public interest has been achieved for each of these elements. That's why I really felt that since it's allowed subject to the PUD ordinance, that's what we should be looking at. The first criteria is whether it's appropriate, whether there is an appropriate relationship to the surrounding area, and that's what where Cassie said she was struggling. That's one criteria for this commission to consider. You know, as Cassie pointed out, may be consistent with the surrounding area, but is it consistent for this PUD? Another criteria is D, that privacy in terms of the needs of individual families and neighbors is provided. That's a criteria to consider by this board. Issues of adequate sewer and water system. Those are the types of things for this board to consider in either granting or denying the request.
She's getting it pulled up right on the screen, actually.
Oh, well,
Kathy, did you have a question? Why Jim's looking that
But I'm
over?
ready to make a motion.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Rich.
Or
go
maybe
ahead.
some comments and some thoughts. I'm a landowner or I'm a developer and I want to come in and do a specific type of neighborhood. I can zone that property, suburban residential, high-density residential, pick your zoning category, and I can subdivide it and I can do what I want with that subdivision underneath those zoning ordinances. In this case, the developer came in and did a PUD. And so more of my question for the group is if someone comes in, develops something with a specific set of items that they want, and in this case, we actually have the original developer, a letter from the original developer indicating the intent, because what we're being asked about now didn't exist at the time, to clarify that. And we have the entire neighborhood, you know, and there's it appears at this point that the majority of the actual people that have homes, and maybe not all of the lot owners, are against it. But if you have a PUD, and in my mind, the PUD at that point is the protection for the neighborhood, or the character of the neighborhood, and so. I have a feeling this is going to come up more and more because of the vacation home rentals and people living in dated covenants and dated PUD documents and some of these things that are not being updated as they exist. But in this instance, it appears that the intent was for this to be a residential neighborhood and not to allow such things. But the larger question I have is when this PUD is developed and the developer does it for the intent of the entire subdivision or the PUD, and then people can come in after the fact and just change it for their own specific use on their own specific property. When really the intent of the PUD is to define maybe character of the entire development. Does that make sense? I mean, it's almost like how can you come in and succeed, if you will, or secede from what was the intent of the property? So I'm conflicted with Cassie here a little bit because we have a landowner, and I'm certainly a landowner's rights person that has cabins that are rented out right outside of their back door. Yet the line in the sand is on their property line, and they're on the side that says that that wasn't the intent of the original PUD.
Go ahead, Kathy.
You know, I am actually in support your premise, your basic premise there, Rich, that I think that, and this is a little unfortunate because I understand this property is on the transition between the highway service and commercial and the residential. But, you know, the PUD was there for a reason, and I do see this as not in harmony with that existing PUD. And I'm certainly not concerned about the integrity or the you know, the values of the owner and their intention. That's not my point at all. But I can't support approving this because of the PUD was there for a reason. It did not include vacation home rentals, and there's a lot of zoning that does allow vacation home rentals. But this particular PUD, which in Pennington County is a zoning type, and they could, if it was in the, if it was listed as an allowable use, but in this one it wasn't. And I think that it's just very, it's it's just not appropriate to upset the expectation of the majority of the residents of the PUD by changing this one lot. And I've only been on this commission now for a little over a year, but one of the things that I've observed is that we oftentimes look back at precedent in terms of making our decision. So I think that the, the author of one or more of the letters that was concerned about the precedent that this could set in terms of allowing more vacation home rentals as they go up the hill is a valid concern, because we have looked back at precedent. And so I can't support this amendment.
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. I just want to note that Commissioner Marsh and Commissioner Johnson make an important distinction. Although I would always advise this commission against involving itself in the interpretation of covenants, the interpretation or the examination of the intent of a PUD is different. It's this body, this body, as well as the Board of Commissioners, that previously approved the plan unit development. So I think it is very appropriate for this commission to look at the intent of the plan unit development.
And it's always important to know that anything that's out there can always be amended. They're looking specifically to amend their one particular piece, not the entire community. They're also trying to make it in harmony with what's right next door to them, or, right across the street from them. Yeah, I get it. It's the PUD's harmony, but I'm in favor of property rights. I've made that clear many a times, and I get it. I am torn in it too, because I understand there's 13 other lots that are currently, if I remember correctly, 13 other lots that actually have residences on them, if I remember the numbers correctly, and they've got concerns with it. But I also understand that somebody who owns a piece of property, as long as the ordinance allows it, and the ordinance does, a PUD, you can have it in there, and they're just asking to say that their property can be can be utilized on there. I'm currently in favor of it at this point in time, but understanding that I do keep in mind the concerns that the people have. Well, the road issue, the liability issue, that's on my mind. I'm not, saying that that's not an issue, but I think there can be something that can be discussed with the property owner to figure out at least, something that will work for the PUD and for their property if they want to move forward. I don't think there's going to be much. I know there's concern about water, but with it being inhabited only 90 days out of the year, water, I don't think they're going to be draining the water system like someone would think, because if it's only inhabited 90 days out of the year and most of the time after that it's set vacant, that's not a drain on the water system, in my opinion. Anybody else? Go ahead, Jim.
I appreciate the comments made by everybody, and I really can subscribe to some of the same arguments. I am struck, however, by the notion of precedent, which becomes, I fear, at times a drag on change. And properties change, uses change, environments change. And I think we would behoove us to recognize that we have to provide a mechanism by which this change can take place. There's been change taking place around this development, it would appear, for 20 years. Now, this development, in a way, it seems to me, is a bit of an anomaly. It's surrounded by commercial development. It's almost a stone's throw from Highway 16 and all the tourist services that are provided there. In some ways, it's like an island, I think, a blissful place. It must be a wonderful place to live. But the reality is, times do change, and I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that we need to be able to accommodate that change. And so that isn't a very helpful argument, I realize, but it reflects my frustration with the two sides, both sides of the argument. So
If I could
Yes,
just
go
add
ahead,
something,
Kathy.
and because I live very near there, this isn't surrounded by commercial. It's really just got commercial on one side, which is the highway side, and then a little bit on the west side. But the fact is that and then there's this big hill essentially, and the development is back. So that's not quite right. It's very, I've visited people up there and you don't know, you don't see the commercial. This one particular property has the line of sight to the commercial, but that's what I'm saying. This is an unfortunate situation because it is in the transition zone, but the whole area is not like this one.
Right. Quick question. That property just south, is that individual here by chance? The one that's just south of the home property?
I do not know.
That's a private property.
That's not part of the PUD?
It's like 800 acres of national.
If you're gonna speak, come forward, please.
I don't really know if it's worth, but you're
Well,
looking.
we just wanna hear it on the,
Window of where we are, and if you look east of us, you draw the big picture out, there's 800 acres of national forest that borders our subdivision. Of the whole south, or the whole east side and south side, which doesn't mean we're enclosed on an island, so to speak. We are an island because the national forest owns half of it, which means there's nothing ever gonna be over that side.
right. I guess my question, though, still goes back to that house that's directly south. Is that part of the PUD or not? I just couldn't,
Yes, it is.
no, the one just straight,
This
that one right there.
23805?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Did we get any, and the reason why I'm asking that, because when you look at that map and you kind of see the layout of it and, some of the pictures we've seen, I want to know if that person specifically has any issues in support or against, in opposition of this. I mean, did you receive any letters from that individual one way or the other?
I'm looking up who owns it.
That's the Qualms. Is that the Qualms, Mike?
One
Okay,
directly south?
yeah,
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 okay.
they were against it.
okay. I don't know that I received a letter from them.
And they have a letter, and they had stated that there was a playhouse that got destroyed. But I didn't want to bring that up.
He said Qualm, this is Isaac.
Oh, I thought they said Isaacson.
Or who did you say? What is the name of the property owner?
Andrew and Carol Qualm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I was like, wait a minute.
PJ says it's Andrew and Carol Qualm.
And as far as I remember reading through all the letters, they weren't submitted anything in for or against.
And their mailing address is Rapid City. So it's not out of state, at least as far as we can tell from Rapid Map.
Okay. I mean, that's just something I wanted to ask for my. Did y'all hand deliver that letter to them? Kathy, if you don't mind.
We certified mailed everything to them, and we mailed them first class, both. Everyone in the PUD got a certified letter, within 500 feet, and then everybody in the PUD got a first class letter,
So then,
the same letter.
there was a note in here Kathy just showed me. Oh,
Yeah, the only thing that I have about that lot is an email from Chris Cutler on Friday stating the people that he believed would be or had submitted letters, and theirs is the first one. It says Qualms Lot 2, Block 1. As of last night, they are planning on hand delivering their letter.
okay,
I haven't seen it.
okay. Fair enough. Just trying to get some more information. Any further questions
Let's see if I can.
or
Mr. Chair,
comments? Go ahead, Sonny.
just to be sure I understand correctly, this is PUD amendment. It's just going to affect this one lot. It wouldn't affect anyone else. So if somebody else in this development buys a lot with the intention of setting up a VHR, they would have to go through this similar process. So, correct. So there's no actual precedence of what happens here that will ultimately affect other lots in the division?
Any other lot that wanted to do it, you're right, would have to go through this exact same
Exact same
process.
thing. Okay.
Well, yes, but then they would claim that inasmuch as we had already given permission on the subject lot, I think it'd be easier for the second guy and the third guy.
Well,
Go ahead, Jim.
the reality of this location is argues in favor of approving this because it is unique. And as Mr. Campbell, I think it was, pointed out that the bulk of the development is on the back side, and even though there are some empty lots or lots that have been bought but not built on, that climb down towards the developed area. If you were to go find a place to turn into a vacation home rental in this development, this would be the ideal location. It might be the only location that would be palatable to everyone.
If you'd like to come forward, go ahead.
Just in response
Go
to
ahead,
that,
state
Mr.
your name
Coleman.
again.
Eric Lind is my name, and I live further back. I was referencing some lots that are for sale that would be visible by the subject property. And on the map right now, do I touch it? There's that lot, oops,
Not seeing it.
that one, and the next one, and the next one. This one is over the hill, but there are 3 lots there for sale that are in our HOA that are visible or would be visible when they built houses there, that would fall under that same argument
Right,
inside our
I realize that,
development.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah, I just
yeah.
wanted to
I
point that out,
appreciate
that those are the
yeah.
ones that I was referencing earlier.
Yeah.
And that,
But
that's,
there is nothing there, and
Not
you
currently,
do not know
no.
when that will happen.
They are for sale right now,
Oh,
how
okay.
long have they been for sale?
the last 6 months. I think they were put on the market.
The owner had died and his parents now own them.
Okay.
Original owner died.
All right.
So I just wanted
Any
to
further
clarify
questions
that.
for Eric while he's up here? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, any further questions for Cassie or anyone else, or any other statements, comments?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Sonny.
I'm just wondering if there was anything else that could be done regarding, for example, those other 3 lots that were just looked at that could prevent vacation home rentals preemptively before they're sold. Is that an option for this?
Could they write
Oh, yes.
covenants that would prohibit any other expansion?
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And
if-
do you have to have unanimity in that? And would
Yeah,
the
that.
current applicant go along with it if that was the case? I don't know.
Yeah,
Right.
changing the covenants would be an option to prevent it in the future. Also, they could do, the subdivision as a whole could do a PUD amendment to specifically say in their PUD that vacation home rentals are not allowed. Now, that wouldn't prevent somebody from still going through this process and trying to change it, but it would specifically call that out. But that's not quite as binding as
Hold on,
covenants.
And I
Kathy.
think it's
Oh, I was gonna make a comment though about their HOA could go in there and do it as well, and that would be the more legally appropriate for when they come in and sign in a contract that way. That way it's out. Is that what you're gonna
But
say?
I was going to, Noel, I was going to say that that may be the most legally binding way to change their HOA, but we don't enforce HOA. So
Right.
that would require them to go to civil court to enforce anything that the HOA says. But the PUD, we are in charge of the PUDs.
Correct,
And any amendments that we make.
correct. I think Michelle Hoffman wants to,
Michelle Hoffman, State's Attorney's Office. Although our statute, our ordinance does say we will specifically enforce a covenant when it specifically excludes a VHR.
correct. So yeah, if they say no VHRs and in the HOA, then we can.
Okay.
So,
That's good. I didn't know that. That's good to know.
did I see Rob come back home?
Just have a question, really probably for Cassie more than anything, but can we change the amendment to agree to the rest of the PUD not being able to so they don't have to go through that process of the HOA or the covenances? Like if they say no VR, I mean, we'd be agreeable to that is all. I just asked Kathy and she'd
To
agree.
do that, that would take a little bit more time than what we have here, or would that be a condition of, within this, since it's since we're here, but wouldn't we have to
major,
re-advertise for that, since it's changing it for the whole entire PUD, Cassie?
Should.
That would be a whole different issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be, we can't do that.
Yeah, you could add it, right now, there's the condition that specifically says that it's only allowed for this lot. To make it crystal clear, I would say if they wanted to do an amendment to specifically prohibit vacation home rentals, they'd probably want to do it separately.
Separately. Yeah, that's what I was just making sure of. I didn't think we could just put another statement in here and say all the rest of the lots couldn't be used for. But figured it'd be a whole new,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
Sorry, also, if that is something they're going to consider, we'd like a copy of the minutes from an HOA approving it.
Yeah.
Okay. If y'all heard that, just be aware that that's what they would ask. Eric, I take it you want to say something one more time?
Sorry, Eric Lind again. So the state's attorney will enforce covenants.
If it's strictly stated in there that VHRs are not allowed,
What about the original zoning of our development? Does the state's attorney address that?
State's Attorney's Office. It's not the State's Attorney's Office that would enforce. It's, what the ordinance actually says is that this board may consider a covenant where it expressly prohibits a VHR. But we don't, in terms of enforcing a covenant, we would not do that. It's
Right.
just that this board may consider a covenant where it expressly prohibits a VHR.
How does that relate to our current zoning, which does expressly prohibit?
The current zoning doesn't necessarily expressly prohibit. The current zoning is plan unit development under the VHA ordinance. VHRs are allowed in plan unit development, subject to consideration of the criteria under that ordinance.
Okay, thank you for
So
clarification.
just, that brings up, just so that I know what, so my understanding is that both the planned unit development here, as well as the covenants are silent on the issue of vacation home rentals. Is that
No.
right?
No.
no, that's not correct.
They're not.
PUD allows,
Well, I know, but they don't specifically,
Allow it or disallow it.
well, no, it's considered an acceptable use.
no, I'm not
Hold-
talking about the generic PUD. I'm
She's
talking
talking about
about
this one.
this particular one. It does not list that as an allowable use. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Okay, and,
Well, does that make any difference? I can't imagine.
well,
it
but
would.
it does, because it's silent on it, so the interpretation,
Well, they couldn't have excluded something they didn't know about.
It wasn't around whenever this was created. VHRs were not around. I mean,
but there are some PUDs that said it is an allowable use. This is not one of them.
Oh, I don't know. Are there such things?
There are some PUDs that specifically do allow vacation home rentals. Happy Trails, just to the north of this, specifically does allow vacation home rentals.
But those are within the last few years.
I believe Happy Trails was 05-ish, 06-ish.
I think the original PUD for this was 92, right?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
which there would have been no VHRs at the time to even consider whether or not you say we want them or don't want them, because they didn't exist, did they?
Probably not that term, but they were out there. Probably not
Something
that-
similar.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, any further questions, comments? If not, currently, the staff is looking for a recommendation. We should send this to the Board of Commissioners with a recommendation, so I would entertain a motion if someone had one.
I'll recommend denial of the amendment to the planned unit development PU 1806 for the reasons that I've previously discussed.
There's a motion for denial. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Second by Sandy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the denial?
I think you should have a roll call vote.
I'm fine with
What?
that.
Roll
Jim's
call
calling
vote.
for a roll call vote. All right, so we'll do a roll call vote. Go ahead, PJ.
All right, I'm just going to go this way.
That's fine.
So Commissioner Rivers,
No,
No,
no on the denial.
Commissioner Rundy,
okay.
Yes on the denial.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner
No.
Lassiter. You said
No.
no. Commissioner Coleman,
No, but the motion is for a denial, right? Okay. Well,
Do you want to deny
I
it or do
want
you
to
not want to?
deny, I don't want to deny the applicants.
There you go. Then
Okay.
no is your appropriate vote.
Commissioner Marsh.
Yes.
That's a tie
That's
vote.
a tie
Motion
vote.
fails.
It's a three. Motion
Motion
fails. So, is there a new motion? Michelle? Do you have insight?
Oh, I was just going to mention, for this reason, it's always a good idea, whether you're for or against a particular action, to voice it in the affirmative. That way we don't have the
Yeah.
double negative problem.
Well, fair enough then.
Well, can't this just go forward with, to the county commissioners?
Can we-
Showing that we,
Absolutely.
Can we recommend that it at least goes forward to the county commissioners, knowing that we were split on our vote 3-3?
It would anyway, because we'd have to report to them what you did today at their next meeting, next
Okay.
week.
well, I
So
think,
then, to move on from this subject, then, what do we have to make a motion to move forward with just sending our vote,
I think you did make a motion and we got the result.
and it failed, and there's no need to do a secondary vote to send it forward
You're not supporting it, you're not against it as a board.
as a board?
I still make that motion.
I don't think we need to make a motion. That's what I was just getting clarification. I wanted to make sure that it doesn't just die here. I didn't think that's appropriate either, so. Okay, then that carries us on to item number 24.
PJ Conover, Director, Planning Department, almost forgot my name there for a second.
What?
He forgot his name for a moment.
Item 24 is preliminary plat 1826 and subdivision regulation variance 1806 to create Tract A of Rustler Ranch Addition and to waive some plating requirements. The applicant is Rustler Ranch LLC, surveying, the surveyor is Davis Engineering. And I know Ron's not here. Anybody from Rustler's Ranch? Okay, we have one representative in the audience. This was approved by the Board of Commissioners, well, as a layout plat back in 2015. At that time, if you look up on the board, this was the recommendation for the 10-acre lot. There were some concerns about where the lot lines were going to be because they would cross some cabins, but those cabins were easily moved. So what they did is they came back with a different approach on how they wanted to lay out this 10 acres, which actually did not create a problem as far as setbacks with any of the existing structures. So because there was a two-year gap, usually something like this could be a layout minor process. Because there was a 2-year gap, we're asking them to do the preliminary plat. So there's still going to be the administrative step of the final plat after this, just to catch up on some of the things that are different. They've also applied for the subdivision regulation variances to waive the improvement of the section line highway and to waive engineered and road construction plans to be submitted for the Forest Service easement. They also will be heard by the Board of Adjustment on, for their lot size variance because this is 10 acres, which is below the minimum required for this property. As far as structures on the property, let's see, this will probably be the good one. There is a single-family residence built back in around 1975 with some deck additions in 2010. There are 5 cabins. As I said, they're used for rally rentals, so less than 14 calendar days in 1 year, and that was addressed a couple of years ago. There's also a detached garage with a loft. This came up as a little bit of a concern with staff. I did talk with the landowners about this. What was submitted by the contractor to be built is not necessarily what ended up being built or what is being assessed. It was permitted as a garage with a loft. It's being taxed as like a cottage, assuming living quarters in there. Now, the applicant does have the intent, once the subdivision takes place, because that cottage/cabin does exist on the unplatted portion of the lot, to get a conditional use permit to live in that cottage while they build a stick-built single-family residence. So staff was actually very encouraged by that because usually the applicants aren't the ones that come forward with that solution for us. So they've done a little bit of a research. There is a little bit of concern from staff. We haven't heard from the National Forest Service about the easement. We know it was created back in 1966. There's some deeds and exhibits on file on Book 151, pages 174 through 176. And one of the conditions that we put in there is that the applicant meet with a member from the Mystic Ranger Station, which is usually Rodney Brown. He usually has some things to say on this. I did also notice that they did not comment back in 2015 on this. But because because there is a large portion of the Forest Service that goes through the middle of the property, we would really like the National Forest Service to weigh in. They were routed on this, again, through the layout plat 2 years ago and the preliminary plat just recently. a couple phone calls over there, still have not heard from them. There's also an old single-wide mobile home in that easement that needs to be addressed as well. So there are conditions in this staff report to address all these concerns, but to get past the minor plat, because there still is that final plat process, that they'd have to meet all these conditions before the planning director, would sign off on it, or before we would allow the other signatures to be gathered anyway. And they're also looking to waive subdivision regulation variance 1806 for the road improvements and the road construction plans. So with that, one other reminder, because there was a little bit of a delay between the layout and the preliminary, their layouts don't expire. Preliminary plats do expire, so I just want to, for the record and for the landowner, that the preliminary plat per section 300.42C, the approval of a preliminary plat shall lapse unless a final plat based thereon is submitted within 2 years from the date of approval. So that would be the date of the Board of Commissioners if they approve it. So with that, staff would make two recommendations. The first recommendation would be to approve subdivision regulation variance 1806 to waive improvements of the section line highway and submittal of engineered road construction plan for improvements to the Forest Service easement.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, any members of the audience want to comment on this item? Come on up.
Hi, my name is David Way. I'm the owner of the property. I guess I didn't know if they had on file the letter that came from Rodney. We had submitted a letter from the Forest Service. We're in the process right now of getting the easement. They're going to abandon that easement based on the fact that it's no longer used. It's just a process of doing that, and we've been working with Rodney for the last couple of years trying to get this resolved. And the problem that they're having is there's no terms in for what they do when they abandon it. So it's in Colorado, I think, right now for them to abandon it. So the abandonment issue with the National Forest, we've addressed that quite a bit. And that's one of the reasons it's taken so long to go from when we first addressed it and to where we're at now. And I think, and then all the other things in here that the conditions are, things that we're taking care of or have already taken care of.
Okay. Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Rich.
Sir, do you have any concerns with any of the conditions that are in here, the 11 conditions?
No.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion for the first item.
Move to approve subdivision regulation variance SV 18-06 per staff recommendations.
All right, there's a motion.
Second.
Second by Kathy. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. And then the secondary recommendation?
Second recommendation would be approval of preliminary plat 1826 with 11 conditions.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carries. That takes us to item number 25.
Item 25 is County Board Report. The Board of Commissioners concurred with the Planning Commission's recommendation from the August 27th, 2018 Planning Commission meeting.
Awesome. Any questions on that? All right, item number 26, items from the public. Anybody from the public want to speak? Seeing none, items number 27.
27 is items from staff. Just a reminder about the South Dakota Planners Conference coming up in Huron, August 17th, or October 17th to the 18th. If anybody is interested, we'd have to get rooms and stuff like that. So just let us know as soon as you can, because the agenda is up, and they have some reserved rooms for people who are attending the conference. Also, any questions on that?
Nope.
Item B, the on-site wastewater installer training at the Journey Museum on October 5th. I believe one commissioner has already asked that be put on the list to attend. If there's anybody else, just let us know. by the end of the week if you can, so we can let Brittany know, because she has to order the meals and make sure that there's enough seating for everybody. So that is an all-day item, even if you can attend for a couple hours and, just pop in and we're not gonna take, breakfast or lunch. You'd be welcome to come there. Any questions?
Nope.
Okay. Item C is an update on Plan Unit Development 1603 for Dan and Nancy Evangelisto. So this was at the board at their last meeting. What had happened is during the process they went through some of the conditions and they would approve some. The chair wanted to approve them or not approve them individually and then do them as a whole. During that process, the board had a tie vote. Commissioner Farabee was not in attendance at that part of the meeting. At that part, per statute, if I right, that has to automatically get pushed to the next meeting for hopefully there will be a full board, so he wouldn't have a tie vote. So the motions that they made and approved were a majority, but one specific one on the temporary or the permanence of the tent for 3 or 5 years. What they wanted to do was do solid sides with the 6-inch insulated walls and allow the tent membrane to remain for 3 or 5 years. So the motion for the 3 years is what tied. So that motion was going to get carried over. They then made another motion on another condition which passed. However, at the very end, when they wanted to vote all the conditions, they accidentally also voted that tie vote. So we have to go back and at the next meeting, and they're going to readdress that one condition or those two votes, basically. So I did let the Evangelistos know. I haven't heard from them on what they're going to do. But it, again, as we said, came down to the tent. They did not change the condition about the noise to add amplified music, and they did keep it for the entire PUD, which was different than what the Planning Commission had recommended for specific lots. So those are kind of the big things for the Evangelistos. So we'll update you on what happens next.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, comprehensive plan.
Yep, comprehensive plan update. It is now View to 2040 on the website. The draft plan is available for public review. We're also going to make little business cards, kind of like your opinion matters. And when we have people come up to the counter, we're going to hand those out because we want as many people to give input on this as possible. When that will come before the Planning Commission is still up in the air, but I wouldn't expect it. I wouldn't expect it until at least after Halloween at all.
Can we pick up those business cards and take them with us and pass them out too?
When we make them, yes.
Yeah. I figured, I mean, that's obvious.
Yeah.
Thank you, PJ.
And I want to thank Joan from the Commissioner Manager's Office. She's the one that designed them for us, so thank you.
All right.
Nothing further.
Any questions for PJ? Seeing none, any items from the membership?
I just want to say that I won't be here next time. The 24th, I believe that is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Anyone else? All right. Adjournment. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And seconded by
Second.
Sonny.
Which one moved it?
We'll take Jim and Sonny, I guess. And all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. All right, adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.